Hey everyone, James Azar here with the CISO Talk podcast. Really excited to have you on. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe now. We are the number one cybersecurity podcast in the country of Ireland, I've been told this week. And so I'm very, very grateful to the lovely people of Ireland for being great supporters of our podcast. And we are number 20 in England. So thank you to Apple Podcast for letting us know. That's all thanks to you, our listeners and our supporters. I have a unbelievable episode today. I've got the one, the only, Eric Yancy. He's the ISO for this great city of Irving in the great state of Texas.
Absolutely. Yeehaw.
Yeehaw. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Texas. All my exes live in Texas.
Eric, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, James. Thank you for inviting me.
I got to tell you, so before we kind of get started on this podcast, you and I were jibber jabbing here and wasted a lot of valuable time.
Yeah.
But I love teaming up with other practitioners because there's something to be said about CISOs sharing information. This isn't a show, and I told you this, but for those listening for the first time who could be fans of you, Eric, who go, Eric's doing a lot of podcasts lately. And but I think COVID has brought out this whole idea of everyone trying to create content, which is great. Mm-hmm. And so this show's focused on you. This show's all about Eric today. It's not about me. It's about cyber, but it's really about the people who are in the front lines of this battle. And so with that being said, folks, Eric Yancy's here with us. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I guess it's kind of a yin and yang. My ego doesn't need any more boosting, but on the same token, I am humbled because I think we have an obligation to share our experiences, share information with our fellow practitioners, as you said. You can learn as much from other people's failures as creating your own. So I can tell you how to do it wrong at least a dozen times.
I can tell you how to do it wrong more times than I can tell you how to do it right.
Right. You don't want to go there.
Well, I mean, security, it's really funny. You talk about information sharing. Every time I meet with other CISOs, right, we talk about information sharing. And information sharing used to be something between corporations, between CISOs, between government and private enterprise. But between CISOs, it's always like this almost, when I see you at an event and we're having dinner, we'll share information. But outside of that, we don't really share. And we're not going to get into specifics here on the show, folks. So, if you're a cyber criminal and you're hoping to get insights, you're not getting that here today. If you're a practitioner and you want to further your career, you want to learn about how Eric does things, this is the perfect show for you. And let's kind of introduce you guys to Eric. So, Eric, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got started in cyber, a little bit of how you started your career. Hey,
all right, so I'm here. You hear me?
I hear you now,
okay.
buddy.
Okay. Wow, technical glitch off the bat. So, actually, I after graduating I have an associate's in robotics and automated manufacturing out of Pennsylvania. I quickly realized that the Amish don't have a lot of technology, so I actually moved down here to Texas shortly thereafter, and had an opportunity to interview at a company, Sabre. And at Sabre, this was back in the modem days, right? So 14.4 modems and, all, screeching to get connected. They had a website that they were just introducing. It was a business-to-business travel website. And there are corporate customers they were selling to that had these performance issues, right? Slow connections. And so they wanted this person who was kind of a charismatic geek that could talk to the customers, troubleshoot network issues without having to engage their network or development team, because they are kind of, at that point in time, they were like, you do not want to talk to, Bill Bob, right? Because he's just, in his mom's basement, drinking Mountain Dew. So, I started doing that, and it was really, I had a great time at it. It was really achieving a lot of success through getting customers that were frustrated back into more of a happy state. Well, this was back in 94, 95. And so we started getting questions from these same customers, financial institutions, federal governments, that this business-to-business travel site was being, you know, positioned for, to do these security questionnaires. And you know, everybody was like, I don't even know what this means. You know, 100 questions about security, we don't even know what that means. So what I had to do is basically take those questions and research the answers for the company. Like, you know, what kind of firewalls do you use? And you talk about sharing information. Think about in 90s, you know, oh, we're not going to tell you we use a firewall, let alone what brand, right? So I mean, it was insane. But anyway, so that's when it just kind of all came together for me. I really love the security. I love the niche that I feel even to this day is being able to talk to technology, right? To actually speak to and even, you know, do some of my own little ethical hacking. At the same time, being able to actually use a translator ring and translate that to a management team or to customers. And so that's kind of where I really started security. And I guess you say the rest is history.
Security to me is fascinating. People have so many different backgrounds. I say that on every episode. I feel like I should just like read this line once.
Right.
But
here's a card.
Well, there's no one road to security. For lawyers, there's one path to lawyers. You love arguing. You think you're always right. So, you know, you go to law school, you become a lawyer, right? That's the beaten path. In security, the path is being in so many different ways.
Well, and I've had people ask me, and I've done some mentoring, and I've actually done some like a career day, you know, and people ask me, you know, I want to get into security. What do I do? And the CISSP has always been said, right? A mile wide and an inch deep. And that really does, not only does the background of professionals vary so much, even once you get into the space, it's like a medical field. You could be, you know, an optometrist. You could be, you know, just a practitioner of different types of medical. The same with information security. If compliance drives you, then go to that route. If, you know, access management, you know, you confidentiality, encryption. My big thing right now is quantum cryptology and how that's going to disrupt our entire security stack in the next, say, 10 years. So, you know, if you're a cryptologist, so again, not only is it the diversification of the entry into it, but once you get into security, you're not really locked into, you know, people think security is security. It's not. You know, there's how many different domains, and they are subdomains. So it's an amazing career.
It's an amazing career. It's a great path. And as we speak about that, you know, you bring up Sabre, and when you said Sabre, it brought me to The Office.
Yeah, no, yeah, not paper.
And then the name is Jan, and you said the name Jan from Sabre, and it just took me right to The Office.
Well, yeah. You know, actually, it's so funny. So another company I worked for actually had TPS reports. That's another show. Anyway, so so Sabre, they are the big database in the sky that almost all travel websites, you know, your Expedias, your Travelocities, even your travel companies like Carlson Wagonlit Travel, they all use this database to get flight information, hotel availability, rental cars. But I mean, it was developed on mainframes, and it's
still a DOS system, right? To look up an airport in this, you still have to put like KDAL, right? Wow. Like as a travel agent, you go to school just to learn the initials of the airports.
Yeah, no, it's well, I'm not going to comment too. You know, I don't want to. They have their place, and their technology is ever evolving.
It's. I remember when I moved to Israel in 2009, I went to book a vacation, and in 2009, Expedia and TripAdvisors were just growing here, but in Israel, there's still travel agencies. Mm-hmm. So you walk into a travel agencies, you sit down in a stinky, smelly office. They offer you bottled water, and they want to book your trip for you. And I see her get on this desktop, and she starts to input DOS commands. She goes, where do you want to go? You want to go to Paris? Okay. She looks up KCDG. Charles de Gaulle. That's the airport. And she enters KTLV to KCDG, and she looks up the dates, and I'm like, this is, wow, I haven't seen a system like this. And that was 2009, 2010. And
it's even not even DOS though, right? So there's a character called the Cross of Lorraine. I mean, now you got hieroglyphics. So yeah, yeah. Okay. So it's like me telling my kids, sometimes I'm like, "Hey, Dad, can I get your your Netflix password?" Right. Well, I use a password manager, so it's tilde ampersand. I don't even know what the character is. 0 9. It's like, yeah, just
listen. I'm a copy paste this, send it to you in WhatsApp.
I'll email it to you.
I'll email it to you with the subject title, password for Netflix.
Yeah. All your viewers at this point say, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to listen anymore. This guy cannot add value.
Talking a little bit about cybersecurity leadership. So what are some of the key skills and qualities you look for when you're hiring people for your team?
So from a technology perspective, and I'm going to caveat this with, in order to be successful in my opinion, as a security professional, you have to have a hacker mentality. And I'm using it as the purist, not as what's been known to be bad, right? So hacker is saying, I don't care what it should do. I care about what it can do, right? Think outside the box, be tenacity, be curious. And so, when I interview, especially technologists, I ask them, describe your lab. And if they look at me like, a puppy that just heard a sound, like, whoa, what? It's like, what, if you get into this job because you think people are going to like you, or because you think that it's a very, a 3-hour a day job, then no, you've got to be passionate such that at 2 a.m. if somebody calls you or you get a notification that something happened, that you want to get up and do those things you need to do. So, you have to be passionate. So the first thing is, I want to understand, do they have those traits that are not necessarily trainable? Curiosity, how do you break things? If I were to do the most damage to you, this is how I would do it, and then try to mitigate those risks. So those are the type of personality traits that I think are extremely important to be successful. But from a professional perspective, if you're not able to communicate and what I would call effective listening, and I'm challenged with that, right? Because I like to talk, but every now and then just shut up, listen to your stakeholder, listen to their pain points, and then be able to provide value to enable their, to mitigate the risk to their processes that they need. So that's where I start looking at, what is your communication skills? What is your personality type? And there's such a thing as it's called like the invisible manager, where you adjust your communication style based on your audience. And so, if you go into, and I use this example, you go to a CFO and you start talking firewalls and, DHCP and all these, you're an idiot. You just walk away. But if you go in there and you understand they're a numbers person and they care about, how they're going to close their quarter in a timely manner, and what would a ransomware, what would that happen? What would that impact them? Well, then you start listening to, what is your 3 critical metrics, right? Okay, it's this, this, and this. What technology do you use to get to those results? Okay, the server, this share, this whatever. Well, then my job is then to listen to that they need and come back and say, this is how I can reduce the possibility of bad things happening to prevent you from making your numbers or publishing your results. Well, now you're no longer an obstacle, a necessary evil. You're now a trusted technical partner. And that success can be achieved when they reach out to you without you even knowing and say, hey, we got a new project coming. We'd like to get your input on how we can make sure that it works the right way. You just can't win better than that.
So you bring up your last statement is I think so important, because a lot of challenges because of COVID-19, and we're going to get to COVID later. This isn't a podcast about COVID, but those relationships that you talk about when looking into people, being a trusted partner, it's harder to maintain those when you're out of the office, right? Because a lot of those conversations are water cooler, coffee room, lunch room, elevator conversations that now don't really exist.
Right.
What are some, kind of deviating from some of our structure, but what have you done to maintain that level of openness and communication with the rest of your company?
Well, it's almost like a disaster recovery plan, right? In the middle of disasters is not the time to make that plan. Okay. So what I've done, and I've only been at the city for about a year and 5 months, a year and 4 months. And over that last year, I've established those relationships that I just talked about. So, COVID is certainly an example, but you have to, from the very beginning, or if you haven't already, start that conversation. Go in and start meeting with the directors and sitting down and introducing yourself. And the result of that, I started actually seeing the benefit of that only like 5 months in. I've never in 20 plus years of security, I've ever had somebody wave to me in the parking lot as I'm walking into the office. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness, they're doing this, right? And it's like, okay, so you're establishing a rapport and a relationship so that they want to contact you. So if you wait until say unfortunately you didn't have that, that vision, so you're sitting in a place now and you're in this little silo, there's no benefit to your stakeholders, constituents to reach out to you. And so yes, you are going to be kind of isolated. But if you've already reached out to them, spoke with them, they know the services, you've hung your shingle, what can I do for you? Then those type of, they will reach out to you and say, hey, oh, by the way, this person is furloughed and they need to have their access temporarily disabled. Well, there's a new concept for a lot of companies right now. They're not fired. And a lot of the times you don't want to remove their access because that person is still, they may come back, and you don't want them to be rogue. You don't want, so it's like this limbo state of a state that most companies may not even known about until this COVID. Well, there is no access, IAM that supports half enabled. So being able to have those people come out and talk to you now in COVID was a result of me explaining to them before that the information security office has to be part of a process, because if a person is on FLMA or an other type of leave and their data starts getting exfiltrated or the city directory gets exfiltrated, that's a bad thing. But if I don't know that they're out on leave, how would I be able to protect you? And so now they're actually reaching out to me. And that's where I say, again, it's success, but it's not achieved today. It's based on a reputation, a rapport, and relationships that's been built over the last year for me.
We often talk about building relationships in cyber, right? I think every CISO talks about sitting with the different stakeholders in the organization, understanding how to be a business enabler to, rather than security be a limitation on their business, let security be part of their business and enhancing it. Don't make, 50 screens for someone who only needs 2. Right? You don't need the same security measures for your HR person who never works from home in compared to your traveling sales guy who's constantly in airports, hotels, restaurants, and cafes.
Right.
They need 2 different user security identities from someone who comes and logs into a desktop in your office in a controlled environment to someone who you have no control over their environment because they're constantly on the road.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so this actually took me several years to get somewhat right, but everybody talks about risk assessments, right? And then everybody says we can't eliminate risk; we just reduce it to a acceptable level. But if you take a look at a security framework, and say you're an executive or a leader, or a CISO within an organization, when you start talking about risk management, right? And information security should be part of a whole, a bigger, broader risk management, at least, process. So if this is where you talk about compliance versus security as well. I'm kind of getting all these into one thing. If you look at and understand a business, right? So first you've done these stakeholder interviews and everything else. Everybody talks about that. But what does that mean? That means you go back and you, as a CISO, perform a valid and meaningful risk assessment. And I'm not talking about cut and pasting a NIST 300-page document. I'm talking about, here is the realistic 100 things that could go wrong with your business based on my understanding of the business. And of those 100 things that can go wrong, we're going to disposition them differently. We're going to transfer risk. We're going to accept risk. Oh, by the way, here's a subset of that we're going to mitigate. Now, the mitigation, I'm going to design controls because I'm a valued partner with you. Now, the controls, are going to be audited because you want to make sure they're efficient and effective and implemented correctly. So now when an auditor comes into you and says, okay, here's your control framework, we're going to audit it, but you may have a exception on one of those controls. You have the ability as a CISO to basically prove a case that says, well, this is one of three controls. One's detective, one's preventative, whatever the case is, but they map to this risk, and that risk can be mitigated through other mechanisms. So overall, you've got a kill chain there. You haven't, basically that one deficiency doesn't result in a material weakness as it would be. And so by doing it that way and understanding how a business impact assessment, a risk assessment, control framework, and audits all work together to be able to effectively and correctly manage those risks, then you're of value. But to your point, if you just say, everything is going to be managed at the same level, right? All employees will have this two-factor authentication. Everybody. Okay, I get that. That means that a lot of people who don't need it will be, implementing it. And there's people that should have it that will bypass it because they have admin access, and they will bypass it somehow by creating another account. So what you've done is actually reduce your security by having this one-size-fits-all risk. But if you actually go in and do intelligent, real work instead of just sitting back in a desk and thinking the world's safe, then you're going to be able to be a more valued partner to your business and actually do your job better, in my opinion.
So you bring up a great point, which is a lot of times CISOs focus on security behind a desk and strategize. And I think that's a common mistake that some security folks do. Not all, some security folks do. There's the enlightened folks that really want to understand the business and kind of study the business and really build security into the company's DNA, right?
Yeah.
And that's critical. So what skills do you really need to master outside of security to enable you to be an enterprise leader and also kind of push the security DNA into the organization?
Well, and I hope I don't get too much hate mail from this, but I don't think the information security discipline is immune to the Peter principle, right? So in a hierarchy, you're promoted to your level of incompetence. And if you take that to say, this is a great lead, they become a manager, they're a great manager, they become a VP, and they're a great VP, and now they're a CISO, and they suck as a CISO, they're not going to get fired, they're just going to stay there, right? So if you take that logic throughout an enterprise, you basically, the Peter principle is that everybody at your leadership team is incompetent. Maybe not. But what I would say, though, is that I've experienced personally where there's a technologist who wanted to be a manager or a CISO for all the wrong reasons. I want respect. I want a big mahogany desk. I want, a seat at the table. And all three of those are horrific reasons to be a CISO. You should be a CISO because you want to help your company. You want to be a force multiplier. You only can do, say, 60 hours a week of work, but by influencing a culture, you can multiply yourself and do exponentially more work. Those are the reasons, right? These are the things that are so important as a leader. And I'm going to tell you, I failed at that, right? My first, I wanted to be a manager so hard, and I was so pissed when somebody said, we hired a manager from outside the company. We didn't want to promote you. And now in retrospect, right, years of scar tissue later, that was the best decision they made, not only for the company, but for me. I wasn't ready. I wanted to be a manager because the desk, authority. And it's like, when you talk about an executive and I'm humbled because I don't know the answer. I'm just going to tell you my opinion, is that if you're there for the right reason, then the skills that you are wanting to really focus in on, psychology, sociology, communication, interaction, listening, those are the things that a business leader is going to use in their toolkit to succeed. And not necessarily, if you're a great technologist, I had a CISO one time. He was my best SOC analyst. I told him all the time, I was like, listen, if you're doing this, threat hunting within our platform, who's doing the CISO job? Because, I'm not an introvert. And I was like, you need to go do you, boo boo, and I'll do this. And if I'm not doing this correctly, give me instruction on how you want it done. But you cannot, you can't be so micromanaging that you're not doing the CISO role. And eventually, unfortunately, it resulted in, the departure of the CISO, because nobody's doing that vision, right? Doing the strategic part of security. And so that's where it's important, I think. Get out of the, if you're a technologist, either A, admit it and go down that path, or B, do it as a hobby, but be a leader of the group.
You say something that I think a lot of times there's a balance that a CIO has to strike, right? And that balance is between being a leader to earning the respect of your troops.
Yes.
Right? So in the military, you respect the general not only because of the stars, but because of the stories. Someone doesn't become a general by coasting.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Right? You become a general because of things that you've done along your career that have led you to the path to become a general. And those and when a general shows up to his troops, I think the best generals are the ones that I think get their hands dirty a little bit.
Well, so one of the best experiences that I had, and one of my mentors, and I can't ever thank somebody enough, is Arlen Goldstein at Securus. He was the CTO I reported to. At one point, so I'm in his office. I'm a brand new CISO. This is my actual first pure CISO role. And he says to me, if you go into a room and you say, because I said so, right? You have the authority to do that. You literally have that authority that you can tell them, I'm telling you, this is the way it's going to happen. But when you do, you have failed everything. And I'm like, what? And he's like, it's like, if I have to tell you, if you failed all ability to enroll the people to do it because it's the right thing to do, and you have to, it's like your kids, right? Because I told you to. Well, that's because they don't add value. They don't think that what you're asking them to do has value, right? But he's like, if you don't take the trash out, it's going to overflow. And if that trash overflows, it's going to get stinky. Do you want a nice clean house? Well, yeah. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and have you take out the trash? That's different than, I told you to take the trash out, therefore you will. Well, they'll do it. But the very moment that you're on a business trip, the trash won't get taken out. So that's where I would tell you, enrolling your employees and those staff around you and guiding by example, having consistency and not being, fly off the handle, they will follow. I love this. I said, again, right back to that mapping I talked about, risk assessments, control frameworks, and everything else. Let me tell you another benefit of that. When I go to a developer and I say, hey, I need to get a backup administrator. I want backup reports from this month, and this month. And they come to you and say, oh, it's going to take me 4 or 5 days to get that to you. Okay, you failed. You failed the audit. What do you mean? No. The fact is, this control is yours. I'm not going to get fired if a backup can't be restored. You are. The fact that I have failed to communicate to you the importance of backup restoration reporting to you is the failure. So if I'm on vacation for 2 weeks, are you going to restore your backups on the weekly basis because it's a control you think is important to make sure that they are recoverable? So again, because I told you so is going to get you compliant and get you a checkbox. It will fail. By the way, you may even pass, but every breach of credit cards has been PCI compliant companies, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're going to pass the audit. Okay, Ernst & Young is happy. But by the way, the first time you have a ransomware attack and need to restore your backups, your enterprise is out for 6 weeks because you didn't see the value. You didn't get enrolled. You didn't think it had value. So what I would tell you as a leader is enrolling them into, this isn't my security. I'm not in charge of, I'm at the city. I tell people I'm not responsible for security. You are. And I know that's been said, it's trite, whatever, but I mean that. It's like my job is to tell you the bad things that can happen and provide you the tools and resources so you can reduce the probability of that happening. Now, if you choose ultimately to say, nah, I'm going to accept the risk, hey, you're the one who's, in charge of the water supply, the police department, the fire department. If that goes south, I've done my job. And if I fail to get them to understand that risk, not, yeah, I don't use FUD, by the way, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I hate that. But if I'm like, if I tell them, listen, here's a real distinct possibility this could happen, and here's very simple things we could do to reduce it, and they choose not to, I think I failed my job, right? Because it's like somehow there's a delta between what I think and you think, but ultimately it is their responsibility. I know I fly all around on this communication, there's James, but it is important to understand that, yes, if you don't understand security, and by the way, James, so it's Bruce Schneier. I love this guy. By the way, I didn't know he's like 4 feet tall. I mean, I didn't know if you've ever seen him, but I'm like,
I have. I saw him. I got to hang out with him in the RSA media room. I go to RSA under a press badge, which is absolutely magnificent, by the way. You know why? No vendor wants to talk to you. You don't get harassed by the salespeople. You get harassed by the marketing people. It's brilliant.
It is.
It's brilliant.
You
get all the swag from the marketing people. You get all the CISO swag because you're a media guy and they want you to be their friend. Without any of the harassment of all the sales guy chasing you around.
Oh man, I'm going to use that now. I'm going to, but no. So Bruce, one of the quotes, and I'm going to misquote him, but the essence of it is, if you use technology to solve a security problem, you don't know the technology and you don't know the security problem. Security is psychology and sociology. It is not technology. Technology is a means to an end, right? So my point is this: if
technology is a tool to security, it's not the end all of security.
Exactly. So, and I know I'm going all around and about to say this, but I think that if you understand your business and you understand security and you even understand technology, then you're not going to be a manager. You're going to be a leader. Your peers, the people who report to you, and your management team are going to support you that way. But if you go in, one, trying to flex your muscle, and B, throw technology to solve problems, you're going to fail.
So let me ask you kind of this as we're talking about this. So what aspect of security do you spend the most time on? So where do you focus your efforts in terms of security? Are you more focused on the human aspect rather than technology? Is it even? How do you manage your time and your focus?
So that has changed over the years based on my role. So if I speak currently at my role, now there's a lot of context here. I've only been at the city for a year and a half, but the information security office at the city as a formal entity is only a year and a half old. So prior to me coming in, information security was a part of other teams and other initiatives, right? So I don't want to use the word bolt on, but okay, we're going to implement a firewall because we need a firewall for network. Oh, by the way, it does security stuff too. So within that, I'm creating from basic scratch a security framework. So the most of my time over the first year, by far, was marketing. It was educating myself on all the different pain points and introductions and so forth. Now, over the last COVID aside, right, it certainly had some distractions there. In Texas, there was a House bill, 3834, that mandates every local municipality have all their employees and elected officials that have access to city data trained with cybersecurity training. I love it. Well, there's a deadline of 6/14/2020, and so my focus has been overall, right, besides distractions, on obtaining, going in and doing that training, and that of course is layered. It's marketing it, then doing phishing tests, and making sure everybody has the technology to take the training. And there's a lot of different variables, but yeah, that was basically been my focus.
So is this training more phishing related? What defines a cybersecurity training according to
Texas state law?
Texas state law.
Well, so there's two buckets. The first bucket is if you don't have a formal information security officer assigned, a dedicated person, then they actually have a list on the Texas CISO website. Here is the training you have to take. So they have several vendors that, here's the 30 minutes or 45-minute training you have to take. So it's very prescriptive. And in that training, it has, phishing, social engineering. It's just a basic training class.
Gotcha.
But you know, about the same time the law came out, they hired me as an information security officer. The coincidences are amazing.
The odds are unbelievable.
No, but if you have a dedicated information security office, you are exempt from that required training. And now my ethics and my reputation are, I have to design and develop a training program that meets certain criteria that's outlined in the law. So it has to, I don't even know what it is quoted, but bottom line is that it has to, be interactive, and they have to go through a quiz. But for me, I punted on this first year, and I'm actually using one of the training modules that they have, declared as official. But what we also do, and ransomware is the biggest fear of our city council, and it should be. I mean, there was 24 cities that were bricked last year in 2019 due to a ransomware attack. And I say bricked. There was actually, critical infrastructure that was impacted. And then like Albany, New York, right? The actual police vehicles were bricked. So they were very concerned about that. So even before this training, we were doing phishing tests. So randomly, every employee at the city will get at least 2 test phishing emails sent out, random. And if they click it, they have to take a 5-minute vignette. This is what to look for. It's not a punishment. It's, hey, you missed it. This is what you should look for next time. But we have this phishing alert button that you click on, and if they submit it as a phishing alert, they get a gold star. So you passed. Thank you for your attention. So we do that like I said, there's 1,800 plus employees. Every one of them gets at least 2 a month. And I will tell you, our click rate from the time I started to now has dropped significantly. I mean, significantly, and it's very encouraging. So now, unfortunately, the result of that is when I sent out the mandatory training, everybody thought it was a phishing test, and nobody took the training. So now I had to go back. Yeah, it's like, okay, I succeeded, but now I failed. So we had to send it out in the newsletter and let the directors know, please let your people know in meetings, because they're not going to believe me because I send out phishing emails.
I find myself in that same situation. I'll do phishing emails, and people try to get smart with phishing emails. Although I will say that I've seen an unbelievable uptick in phishing emails because of COVID-19.
Oh, and another one. Yeah, we have this too. But one that is impressive, and I know the enemy, right? There's been a recent uptick in voicemail attachments. So with the payload, and at one point, the only thing, it was funny, is that because people, they get the voicemails attached in unified messaging. There was a corruption. The hacker didn't correctly implement the attack. I guess they had an old version of Metasploit, right? So it failed. It was corrupted. I'm like, thank God, because you have a layered defense. And by the time your client antivirus kicks in, at that point, I'm puckered, right? I'm like, that's not where I want it to be caught, right? But how do you catch those type of attacks in your iron ports, your reputational, those type of things? Because it's a voicemail. It's a WAV file. It's crazy.
Especially now with work from home. So there's more VoIP services, more voicemails are going through email. They're being forwarded that way.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. It's a challenge, and how many CDR solutions actually work on audio files? I don't know of any that work on audio files.
Yeah, I had to tell the city manager, I'm continuing to pursue technical, ways to automatically detect it, but at this point, like most times, you're kind of behind the curve. It's not necessarily a 0-day, but again, like you said, it's like those links to OneDrive, right? The email itself is benign, but then you actually click it and download the file out of band, then your email filters aren't going to catch it, because now you're relying on your other security measures. But that's what it. Never underestimate the evil of others, right? And the people who take advantage of the less educated, the older people, kids, and even panic, this COVID, I hate them. I used to really, really get upset about it, but now I realize through, experience, some of these entities, not all, but some of them are having to have tough choices, right? Feed your kids or, attack a first world country. Now, one thing I am I think coming up in the next several months, it's going to completely revisit is the systemic false information and attacks on our voting systems. I think 2016 was a foreshadowing. They did not compromise voter information. They just manipulated voters' passion and created false narratives. I think this year it's going to be a different story. I believe that they now have tweaked and succeeded over the last year. And to destroy a democracy, you don't do it with a head-on approach. You're going to do it by letting us attack ourselves.
Well, you do it systematically. I mean, you bring up a
Absolutely.
point that I'm very, very passionate about. This whole idea of election security, this whole idea of divide and conquer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very challenging. I find, what's very interesting as a CISO, I get more questions about that than I do about phishing.
Really? Okay. Well, as a municipality, I get now. When I first started working, it was on. I'm on a multi-state ISAC on voter,
Right.
But now it's coming back. Right now, it's like, okay, come November, and even before November, we need to make sure that these systems are secured.
Well, it's the system is secured. I'm like looking to create content around for employees around verifying information and stuff that you see online that could impact your ability to make a right decision at the poll. I don't care who you vote for, but
Right.
I want you to vote for the right person based on the correct information, whatever way your heart so desires. That's the beauty of democracy, right?
Yep.
I don't care whether you vote blue or red. I care that you vote because you were properly informed, not because you were misinformed. And I feel like that was part of what happened in 2016. The Mueller report really did highlight that extensively. Mm-hmm. This whole of misinformation, disinformation, categorically denying.
And and I'm just gonna. So one of the things that I've done as a city, we never before reached out to our citizens for cybersecurity, and I've been blessed with a leadership team who encourages and wants it to happen. So the Rotary Club, we have a retirement facility, and so one of the things I invited Secret Service, the FBI, the Chief of Police, and myself went out and did a complete presentation to our senior citizens at the City of Irving on how to protect himself from fraud, but also we discussed, the misinformation, and here's how it's multiplied in that demographic. They grew up in an era where a handshake and a person's word meant something. It no longer does. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
I think it depends on the person. I'm gonna push back there.
Okay.
I think that. I'd like to say that I've done more handshake deals than I've done contract deals.
Well,
because of the people you do business with.
And I don't discount that. What I'm saying is that if I'm an older citizen, I'm more susceptible to believe and do a handshake deal, right? When the person I'm shaking hands with probably has
an ulterior motive.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm not discounting what you're saying. I think we still have a level of trust, but I think these people trust because in their generation, that's the way business was done.
Correct.
And when you see something on this interweb, it's got to be the truth. So but here's the problem where it gets exasperated. They are more likely to vote because they have the time. They're passionate about democracy, and I'm not saying this based on anything but gut. But when I go out and I start talking to these elderly, I'm saying, look at it with skepticism and go out to trusted sites, whether it's blue leaning, red leaning, I don't care. You need to make sure that just because it has 1,000 likes on it, 900 of those likes are from an account of the same account, right? So those type of things you need to be conscious of, and also recognize, think of it as it's false until proven true versus false. And that is not, I think, a gut for them to do. And then also understand from a security perspective that if I'm going to take a demographic and say, if I can taint them, I could skew the vote the most. Me personally, I think that the elderly, especially those above, say, 50, I'll put myself in that role. Those are the people that I think are going to go out and be passionate. Now, this was before current social upheaval, right? So I mean to readjust that thought process here, because I think that November is going to see an amazing turnout based on some of the current, political
I think
situations.
that remains to be seen. We've
We
seen
do.
this happen time and time again. The same of what we saw happen now actually happened in 2016. It also happened in 2012. Like something where, if you look back at it, election year always brings some sort of social unrest in order to unseat or get a few more votes. What ends up happening is the right time to play this is typically October, not the summer.
Now, James, are you saying there's a conspiracy theory?
No, I'm saying that there's a weird coincidence about social unrest in election years for the president of the United States. A weird coincidence. Now, if you don't believe in coincidence, that's a whole other issue. You may call it a conspiracy. If you're a person who believes that at times there are coincidences, then you might look at this and go, that's awkward, and I should probably look into it. It seems like the motivation this time, though, is to drive the 18 to 25 to the polls, because they typically don't show up. They just don't show up.
I just finished binge watching a 24-part series by a Dr. Armstrong out of Purdue on the Black Plague from 1348 to 1353. And it sounds like, what security? What do you do? As much as things have changed, we're so technologically advanced. Humanity it's a playbook, step by step by step, and it's tragic. It really is. It's like, oh my God, they weren't stupid people. I mean, I honestly, I'm going to tell you, I look back at medieval times, and my gut is, those, they're so stupid.
They were so misinformed.
Yeah, right. But actually, they knew that things spread without knowing anything about germs. Right now, yeah, there's certain they approached situations as we do today, based on the information we have today, right? So it's so interesting, and I love that, because I was looking at it. I started watching it because I was like, I wonder what's going to happen next in this whole pandemic. But your point about this happening over and over and over again, history absolutely with 100% repeats itself, and it's just insane. What's depressing is how little we learn from. It's almost like 51st dates.
So I don't think it's how little we learn. I actually have a theory behind it.
Please.
So we live in what I consider to be, my personal opinion, the greatest country on planet Earth. The most viable democracy to ever be made by man, where opportunities, irregardless of the current social unrest, have been given to every single person, and that's evident by the amount of success that's across every single part of an American life, no matter background, race, creed, religion, you name it. Everywhere you go, and I've traveled to over 100 countries in my life. I've been to over 100 countries. There's a map right behind me, and everywhere that there's a pin on there is a place I've been. So I've been to 6 continents, and I've been over 100 countries. Very rarely in all my travels did I see a diversity of successful people. Typically, it's the same group of people who've been afforded an opportunity. Mm-hmm. They've studied in expensive private schools. They went to American or British universities. They came back to their home countries. They were able to get a step ahead, get an executive job, and essentially become extremely wealthy. In very few places that I've been to, very few, a handful of places, have I seen people really have a drive for entrepreneurship and have a fair opportunity at getting there. Now, mm-hmm. Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect by no means. But History tends to repeat itself because we study history. We indoctrinate our kids from a very early age to look at the history of our country and all of its struggles. And so when we reach a point in time like we are today, we're trying to find any little thing to fight for. Mm-hmm. And we're fighting on things because we're easily distracted. And our generation, myself included, we're a generation of instant gratification. Absolutely. I post a video, I want to see 300 likes, I want to see 300 shares, I want to see 600 comments, right? But that's the wrong perspective. I'd rather have 5 likes, 2 really good comments, right? Because that's quality over quantity. Well, and it's retraining yourself. And I sat with, I live in Georgia, and one of the reasons I moved to Atlanta was I was here for an event, and I met Ambassador Andrew Young, one of MLK's right-hand men. I actually did my high school social studies paper for graduation on Dr. Andrew Young, on Ambassador Andrew Young.
Wow.
So I sat with him at the Marriott Marquis Hotel. I have pictures and video. It was impromptu. We somehow managed to get tickets to his 83rd birthday party, which was hosted by Chris Tucker. It was great. A bunch of celebrities in the room, like you name it, from Hank Aaron to T.I. to, actors, the mayor of Atlanta at the time, the governor, great power in the room. I was sitting on a CNN table with Wolf Blitzer. It was great.
Wow.
And Wolf is awesome. And of all people in that station, Wolf may be my favorite. And I don't have a lot of favorites there. And so, but Wolf's a great guy. And the next morning, I was sitting outside on the bench, and he came out and he sat down with me. And at the time, with my partner, and because we flew in from Israel to be at his party, and I sat with him for about 30 minutes, and he said something very, very, very smart. He said, back then we fought for something because there was a clear injustice. He goes, today we're trying to fight to give everyone an equal opportunity. When everyone has it, it's just a matter of evening out the odds. He goes, it shouldn't be a gamble. He goes, people go to Vegas to win, but you should be able to go everywhere and win, not just Vegas.
That is insightful. But I do have to, and now listen, I don't want this to get into a political thing.
We don't have to.
But I do need to say a couple things, right? I just, in my career, there have been several people that have influenced me a great amount because of their incompetence. I mean, literally, it's not always, and we talked at the very beginning of this, I could tell you how not to do something. I think scar tissue and learning from, mistakes, learning from undesired results, right, is important. It cannot be ignored, right? Everything can't just always be positive. And as much as I, at the time, despised those individuals, those managers, and like, oh my God, I can truly tell you, I have used those experiences to never, ever in my career repeat those mistakes. So the question I have is this. We are destroying a lot of our history right now, statutes and flags and other things, in an effort to emphasize the injustice that they represent. My personal fear is erasing that history. We have to at least consider that if it was completely erased, would we not then fail to learn from those mistakes? I think it's a tragedy. I'm not advocating those things. I'm not saying, I'm not saying Hitler was a great person as an example. What I'm saying is we better study why he came to power, why he was able to influence an entire country to do mass devastation. Because if you don't, the next person who may be a president, it would do the same. Now, am I going to erect some statue of this horrific dictator? No. But am I going to tear out every page that has his name in a history book? I'm just not sure that's the right approach. And I see right now a very concerted effort to understand and empathize with the injustices that were done through, racial injustice in the United States and across the planet right now, I'm just not sure that erasing it from memory is going to meet the result that's needed. I don't know.
And I agree with you. I think we should look at this like this. This country is imperfect. There's no country that's perfect. There's no system that's perfect anywhere in the world today. Like there's no perfect security. As CISOs, one of the first things we tell the business is, it's not if, it's when. And our job is to do everything humanly possible so that when it happens, we can bounce back quick.
Yeah.
Right? And in today, it seems like the idea is to almost say, ransomware is there and we're going to get hit by ransomware, let's pay them. And I think that's the same mentality today with trying to erase statues, flags, and history. I don't think we should ever have a statue of someone who committed mass murder, of someone who promoted any social injustice. I don't care what time it is. That statue should be in a museum as part of a history to educate our young ones on why that person is bad. It shouldn't be in a town square.
And I agree,
in front of a courthouse.
Yes.
I'm not saying erase that history, but that history has a place where it belongs, and it's in a museum. When I was in Eastern Europe and I'd visit their museums, they had the era of the dictatorship of communism, but it was in a museum. It was never outside that museum. And I think as a country, we have to understand that and say, how do we take those things into a museum and put the proper historical perspective on it so that younger people look at it and not see it celebrated? Because when they see it celebrated, that's what creates that level of division and animosity and social injustice, because you look at that statue of whoever it is and you say that. But
by the way, it's educate, not advocate.
Correct.
And that. But by the way, and I'm just going to wrap it around to one of the most powerful presentations I have done was with our city council, and we were changing from. They wanted me to describe a layered security approach, right? Because this is a council who was, very interested in cybersecurity. Baltimore had just happened. They were really wanting to understand it. And so I used the whole automobile approach, right? And the question is, could you have an accident on your way into work? Well, the answer is yes, right? So I had this little vehicle on the spread on the slide go across, and it says, so what do you do to reduce the probability, right? You drive on a road, you drive the speed limit, the driver's laws, and if it all hits the fan, you have car insurance, right? And then you may have a rental clause. And then on the same slide, I then mapped it back to the layers. We have firewalls, routers, and all these things. And this is where this layered approach means. Now, here's the pickle, and this is what I told them to save my job, was to basically say, if you had a car accident, and you driving out of the body shop in a rental car as your car is getting repaired, can you get into another accident? Absolutely. So if we get hit by ransomware and all these things fail, the next day after recovery, could we get hit by ransomware? It answers yes. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's 100%. But realize that if you get to that point, there's a lot of things that have gone terribly wrong. And I only bring that up because, as you said, nothing's 100%. We need to learn from mistakes from the Baltimore and things like from ransomware. But second is communicating in a way that the city council, these are a bunch of older individuals, right? So they're to be able to map the unknown technology to something they can understand was it made an impact. And last year I got my budget approved without any real hard sell. So that was important for me to communicate it.
I used the layer onion method.
Oh,
right? Yeah. But I like the car method. I'd love to see that presentation. Kind of looking at, security projects. What security project did you enjoy working on the most?
Well, so when I was hired in to a company, they did it for a very compliance-centric reason. They were like, okay, we have to be Sarbanes-Oxley compliant. We don't even know what that means. And I was hired in as a Mary Band of one. And they said the first thing you need to do is we had a pre-assessment for SOX, and we failed deplorably because we had user accounts that were disabled. We had admins, domain admins in on servers. It was incredible. And they said, you need to be able to manage user access, and you have no money, by the way. So, there at that time, this is really 15 years ago. So I actually, out of necessity, developed a tool called Access Control Center. And those who've worked with me are like, oh, it was great, but a worst nightmare, because it was based on Cold Fusion, SQL, and LDAP queries. But basically, after 2 years of the coding and developing, it was amazing. I got to tell you, the auditor came in and said, you really need to commercialize this, because the way it worked was, and it's typical of like IAM now, where a user gets onboarded, they get role-based provisioning based on certain things. I could look up a user and it says, here's the following systems that they had access to, or I could do a dump from a particular system. So when an auditor came in and said, hey, I need to know everybody who has access and their roles. But what's beautiful about it is that the queries I was using was in clear text on this web-based platform. So I could change the query and show them, look, the results of the report changed. So how auditors always say, I need the query that you use to get to this result. We're not well, it was able to do that, but it actually even printed out user access badges. If somebody was terminated, it would actually do an immediate disabling and removal of all their access, and even remove their badge access. So it was really, it was very complicated and complex. The problem, of course, was you start diving into development, right? So I'll never do that again, because, even though it was really fun, I got instant gratification out of it. It was an enterprise level application. It was very, just awesome. Again, I'll go back to what I said before. I was a CISO with more technology than CISO, right? So I really, learned from that. The other side of it was, you need to do your job and get the core competency. So now I get that instant gratification through my own hobbies and, hacking and all those things on the side, not necessarily as the ISO for the city.
It's like I said, it's hands-on. It's the best part. So what challenge do you see security practitioners starting to overcome? Like, what problem have we solved, and what problem do we still need to focus on a little bit more to get over that hump, in your opinion?
Well, I would say the answer is similar. I think from when I started in information security, we joked about how nobody would even talk about a breach. I think it was either the Home Depot or the Target breach was one of the first that was actually unveiled, where this is what happened, and how I think the CISO at the time was able to actually do conferences and say, don't have the same issues that I had, and these breaches could have been prevented by the following. Before that, I was in meetings where I actually had to sign non-disclosure agreements to sit in the same room as anybody outside the company. And so being able to do threat intelligence, share information, and have discussions like this was unheard of. And so we've made a lot of strides over the years in being able to communicate. Multi-state ISACs or industry-specific ISACs would be unheard of. I think the challenge that me included, need to continue to improve upon is mapping security's value back to the business unit, listening and understanding. I think we're still challenged because information security is still a cost center, a commodity. It's viewed as a necessary evil. And until we can change that view and really engage, then we're going to always have that security was not they didn't know about a project, or it had to be bolted on at the last second. In those situations, if you do a really, really hard look at yourself, it's because the people that were in those discussions and didn't bring you in didn't think of you as a department, as a value. Right. So if you can start getting the culture change, the mentality change to say, the only way that this project can succeed is by using technology. We don't have the money or resource to actually do it without technology. The only way that technology can function is by having it secured. When you get to that level, I think you're succeeded, but I think we've got a long way to go to get it to be second nature to our stakeholders.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's so much of that in the idea that we need to communicate better with our stakeholders in business. At RSA this year, I did a podcast with Mark Maxman. He's the CISO for the city of San Francisco. And we were talking about what CISOs and ISOs for cities can do with small businesses who are the number one victims of cybercrime by utilizing big business resources to apply it locally to small business levels. Right?
Great topic. Yeah.
A great podcast. I think something where I want to connect both of you and see if you guys can actually share some of that. There's something about being in a position like you're in of a city. When you go to a city as an ISO or a CISO, you're really you're serving the greater community. You're really looking out for small businesses. You're looking out for what drives the economy of the city you're in. And we know that small businesses who go through a cyber event don't always make it out the other end.
The majority don't. Yeah.
Right. And so, I'd love to be able to get a few city ISOs together and put together a really cool program, maybe with some corporate donors that would allow us to create incentives for small businesses, especially because they're part of our supply chain for big business.
And so if I may, so there's two things. Before I worked for the city, my interaction with government was always the DMV, and I always had a cynical view. I'm just going to tell you, right? But now that I've gotten in, I realize that if you're in a city job for the money, you're an idiot, right?
The money isn't there.
It's not there. We have an IT vehicle that literally is put together with duct tape. You get into the vehicle, the dashboard is literally taped because these people don't have money or resources. They're not doing it for that. They're doing it because they're passionate about the impact they can make for the community. I have 240,000 customers, right? Now, where else can I, the water, the difference between safe drinking water and poison is a ratio of the same chemicals, right? I'm now protecting the SCADA systems, the wastewater systems, good pollution and all this. You can't do that anywhere else. And so the CISOs and ISOs of these municipalities, I think, would be a great resource because I'm speaking for myself, but based on my interactions, we would be the ones who get the bigger picture and want to help the world, right? I'm not saying that public sector isn't that way, or private sector, but I'm just saying that, to be able to, like I said, outreach to the senior center, to outreach to the Rotary Club. I'm not doing that because, I'm doing that on out of the purview of my job, but it's because I want to serve the greater good. And I think it would be a great initiative. Yeah. Go out and reach out and see, I tell you, everything that I have dealt with in cybersecurity has an open source equivalent.
Yes. There's so much free security tools out there. And one of the aims of the podcast of CyberHub podcast altogether, CISO Talk being one piece of it, is to really bring all those tools together for people so that they can go to one spot. One of we're doing a lot of really cool. I'm doing a lot of really cool projects with this. I say we. I should stop saying we. Thanks to COVID, it's I. But but I'm doing a lot of really cool projects around. When I do my practitioner brief every single day, it's something that I do for my own. Right. I wake up in the morning. I look at all the vulnerabilities, all the updates. I make a list, and then I start to cross-check that list with my IT infrastructure, especially as a virtual CISO, I'm running, 4 different IT infrastructures simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember every single aspect of every single one. And so a lot of times that, you're going back, you're looking at, and you're going, oh, wow, we need to patch this system. So now you start to, contact the MSP that's in charge of it, going like, hey, I need to get this patched in the next 24 hours, or we need to do this update, or, whatever the case may be. And I now put that out in a 5-minute podcast every single day with an accompanying PDF with all the links. You don't have to look anywhere. It's free.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Take it. If you're a business owner, if you're a virtual CISO, if you're an ISO and you spend 2 hours of your morning looking for this stuff, 5 minutes every single day, you got it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of the best presentations I saw at a conference was a CISO, and the topic was a day in the life of a CISO. And it's like every morning I start doing this, and it just basically, to your point, every morning, okay, what's the cert results for the day, the MSISAC notifications. Okay, now I'm going to look at certain monitoring tools. It's like, how bad is my day going to be? So if you don't have a dedicated resource to do those type of things, you're right. You're just kind of at a disadvantage. And as you said, not only is small businesses, but this became one of the results of COVID, is these huge companies realizing where the weak links in their supply chains are, and it boils down to a lot of small businesses. Less than, what is it? I think it's 150 employees. It's like something significant percentage of these supply chains. So absolutely something we should do.
Yes, and we will. Now it's time for our CISO Insight round. This is the end of our interview, but it is the best part of the interview, Eric.
Oh my God.
One-word answers to the following questions. Only I get to make you explain it. So this is kind of like you're being on the witness stand. You're on the hot seat, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to say, yes or no. Did you see the person kill? I've seen way too many Law and Order episodes.
Yes.
Too many.
Okay. All
Jeff
right.
McCoy. All right. One buzzword you would get rid of forever.
Synergies.
Yeah. One technology that will change the way cybersecurity is done.
Quantum computing.
Quantum computing, indeed. For those who love quantum computing, by the way, I did an episode with Chris from the CDC. I forgot Chris's last name, and I really do apologize. Where we talked about quantum and how the CDC is utilizing quantum. Unbelievable. Before COVID, by the way. Last book you read?
The Phoenix Project.
Why?
I started reading it because it was recommended to me, but it is an amazing document on constraint management, how technology can make or break a company, and it's done in a storyline that is just amazing. So it just was an amazing book.
Last
on business.
movie you saw?
Deadpool.
One or two?
The last one was one again, but I've seen them both. I love them both, but I'm a Deadpool fan.
I'm a Deadpool fan too. Of all superheroes, I can't relate to Superman, to Batman. I get Deadpool. I think Deadpool represents every single security passion guy.
No,
because if you could have an alter ego as a security guy, it'd be Deadpool.
Well, it's so funny is that I wake up to Angel of the Morning. gets me stoked.
My ringtone that wakes me up every morning is the theme to the Israeli TV show Fauda on Netflix.
I'm not gonna have to look that one up.
I don't know if you liked Homeland or 24.
Yes, 24. Mm-hmm.
It's like it puts 24 to shame.
Okay. Yeah, we'll connect. You got to give me this.
I'll get you that. But that is your favorite music.
One answer. Variety.
What's the playlist you were listening to today? What was the last song you heard?
Oh, that would be The Vengeful One by Disturbed.
Okay, see, so
it's been a rough day.
One thing you took away from the COVID-19 crisis?
I'm resilience.
Folks, that's it for our CISO Insight round with Eric. I want to say, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time. We've gone 15 minutes over, but we could have gone for another hour, and I think people would still be tuning in. But this was a great episode. Folks, Eric Yancy, give him a hand.
Thank you. The COVID hand.
The COVID hand. Yeah, the COVID. When I was at RSA, I kept elbow bumping people, but then, Dr. Nigel Smart from, I'm forgetting the name of the company. We were doing an interview, and he goes, do you ever notice how they tell you to cough in your elbow and then shake with it?
That's a different way of looking at it, yeah.
So
Oh man.
it was very interesting. So I was like, so do I shake your hand then and cough here? Should this be the approach?
Yeah. They
I was
start
like,
staking with the left hand.
maybe we should just hug. I go, you don't transfer any germs by hugging unless you're kissing.
Hmm.
I go, let's just hug, but it is what it is. Folks, Eric here for the CISO Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's it for our episode today. We have another awesome episode next week. It's going to be our State of the Union Part 2. Our last State of the Union was also in the great state of Texas. We were in Plano, Texas at the DataBank facility. Mark Hopt, the CISO at DataBank, and Patrick Benoit, the BISO at CBRE. All the three of us got together and we gave a State of the Union. This was a month before COVID-19. And you're going to want to tune in to next week's episode of how bad our predictions were about the State of the Union for cybersecurity, because something came and just knocked it all out, and it was an invisible global pandemic that has taken the lives of over 110,000 Americans and almost another 190,000 people globally. So definitely not an invisible funny thing, but definitely something that has really impacted the way we all behave. Until next week, folks, subscribe, share, and most importantly, stay cyber safe.